Or he take his vote.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order.
All right, almost 8 o'clock. Bye. Gotta go.
Can you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Can I have a motion to approve the board agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. I have a motion to amend the agenda to add an item to new business on behalf of Director Rogers.
Okay. And the issue is? Yeah, do we have a second for that motion? Discussion?
Second.
We have a second. Okay.
So all in favor of amending the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah. All in favor of the agenda as approved?
Well,
I mean,
we
as
don't know what it is
amended?
yet.
We don't know what you're amending.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm adding a first reading of Resolution CL4 to keep the content of the bylaws and the requirements of the committees up to date with needs and expectations of the organization.
Okay.
And then all in favor of
All in favor of the the amended agenda? Say aye.
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 And that's a first reading?
yes.
Okay. Any other changes to the agenda? I have a motion to approve the minutes, May 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, under the president's remarks, I just have one. I want to pass on that Judy Boggs, former board member and county commissioner, passed away on June 12th. And we want to extend our thoughts and prayers to her family. John, GM report?
Okay, thank you, Larry. Okay, so let's start off with the first slide. I always like to start off with some pictures of what's going on. The top right is the bulkheads. I'll talk to you about that, but they're basically closing up what they're doing at Turns Landing. BAINBRIDGE project, we'll have some slides on that. We'll talk about where they're at. Basically, the pond itself is pretty much done. On the left is the High Sheriff Trail mailboxes. We had mentioned even back at budget time that we would address maintenance on mailboxes and High Sheriff, since we had a situation there with some cave-in with the pipe and it affected the mailboxes. We did some work there. So I'm going to give you some idea on what we did, what some costs are, so you can piece it together, because there is a lot about the mailboxes, right? And then on the right is just some signs, new signs that we're going to be putting in that you'll see here in the Pines. Turn the page. Okay, so today I just want to talk about something that I've implemented and the team is fully engaged on, is what they call here is questions and concerns. From where I come from, it's customer service. It's levels 1, 2, and 3. The board members can see on their tables, I've given them a packet, or Michelle actually gave it to them, a packet of business cards that they can give out when anybody has a question for them. It gives the information, which you can see up there on the screen, where you can reach out to level 1. There's an email address, info@oceanpines.org. There's a contact phone number. There's a phone number for after business and weekends. So the level 1, when the calls come in or the emails, is basically staffed by Julie Malinowski and Linda Martin. They'll take care of it, and Ruth Dan. They'll handle the voicemails, and if there is anything they can't handle, then they escalate to level 2, which are the department heads and Michelle Bennett. And then obviously, if that doesn't work out or there's something that needs at a higher level, then it gets to the GM. So this has been working out real well. And we're also able to track the calls better. Now, of course, there are people that escalate right to me. I'm trying to answer them, but I do try to give them the information so that going forward they can follow this. This is a successful program. I've used it many places. And we have been advertising this. So this is a copy Julie made for me of the cards that you all have, and give them out. We have them located. I know they've been putting them at the different departments, and you'll see it in other places in Ocean Pines. We also are showing where we are trying to communicate this. We have to communicate, and we are. All righty? That's it for that. Your assessment dollars at work. Turn the page. Okay, the next one is just the agenda for tonight that I'll be talking about. This is consistent with what I've been doing and following. Turn the page. Okay, some updates, and it is fluid, and we did have some changes today with aquatics, but the update on the aquatics is this, is at this point, all pools have passed opening inspections and have been issued license to operate this summer. We are operating without capacity limits or COVID restrictions. We have turned the corner. We were fully staffed, although today we did receive notice that somebody would be leaving. So that is being addressed, but at least I just found out today. We had up until today 31 lifeguards hired out of 33, so you can put that 30 out of 33 now. Swim instructors have been hired, and we are jump starting the program. It did affect that also, so we will be looking at that. Memorial weekend, Saturday and Sunday, were a washout, as well as with the other amenities. But they did host, the sports car hosted approximately 350 guests on Saturday and Sunday. That was good. Weather's been a little cold, but it's warming up, and so are the pools. Turn the page. Okay, Public Works, broke it down. The bulkheads, as I mentioned, and you saw the picture at Turns. I have gotten some phone calls from Turns Landing. They're basically completed. They've been putting down the sod, landscaping. It's going well. We are a week and a half later than what I had anticipated, but we're pretty much there. A lot of it was the weather. Getting materials on the side of the contractor, and labor like everybody else, but it's basically done. I know I got some phone calls. People are concerned about the sod that we put down with the weather, with the heat. They are watering it. They have two different methods of doing it. They have like a big canister with water that they've been watering it, but we do have the pumper truck. We've used it in other places, even when it was hotter than this, and they go there and they water it. So we do know about that, and we are doing that. In addition to that, there were another 7 lots. I think it's at the back of Pintail, which they're working on, and they're trying to finish up. I sort of cruised there the other day, but that should be finishing up shortly. Okay, so as you mentioned, there, the final grading and sod in that park area. All areas except a small section has been completed. That's just for some in and out, but it's temporary. Okay, so the next one is just some numbers on the bulkheads, but we're pretty much within the budget, everything what we said, the contracts with Fish and Marine, and that's where we are. So we were on track. There is an emergency bulkhead that they're working on at GoldenEye, and we're addressing that, and I'll have more update on that later. The estimated budget, you can see there. The 355, and then some extras for the sod and all that stuff, but all within budget. Turn the page. Okay, so the Bainbridge project, and I got some slides, but just some overview, and I have updated on this before. You see the grant number, right? We had it in the budget. The budget was around 7.25. We got the grant money, 482 for the pond, which is basically almost complete. The OPA budget, we did reallocate money approved by the board. And we went through that whole process. We allocated money there, the 235, so that we would have enough in the drainage budget to complete this project. The contract for EQR is $535,000. There were change orders and some credits that have netted out to $28,000. There were situations there with some pipes and some water feeds and other utilities that got in the way, and it caused some delays and some additional cost. What I'm going to present tonight, and what you're going to see, and what I've been saying is basically the pond part. We did, in addition to this, what we called Bainbridge Light Project, right? There was 3 roads and I think about 5 pipes that we were going to address, and EQR were going to do. We've come into some challenges in a sense. Again, the utilities were in the way. They are addressing that, and we probably, by the next time I update everybody, maybe there'll be a little change. Maybe we will do some of the work ourselves, okay? But we're also looking at the pipes because of the utilities are in the way, so we have to address the pipes and the size. But I don't anticipate anything being over budget. Okay, I know it's important, and especially some board members want to know where we're at, so we did. I've updated the board and the association. We did put in for the first reimbursement. All this is all spec'd out in a process. We did receive, our controller had told me that we have received the money. There was a second payment that was put in the process. I believe it was within the last week, so I will update everybody when we get the reimbursement on that from the grant. All righty? And then at the bottom, and you've seen these numbers before, we didn't encumber or encounter some costs before the project even started, and those were the costs. Turn the page. All right, so the picture part. So on the left, and you've seen it before, but maybe not at this stage of completion, is the forebay. It's the inlet of the pond where filtration takes place before entering the main pond, which is right behind it. This was completed somewhere around May 12th. It's separated by a dirt berm, which you can see there right in the middle of the picture. And that will be covered with the grasses as well as the plants that I've talked about in the past for the filtration. There was a shelf, obviously out of dirt or whatever that's built within the pond, where now all the plants will be placed throughout the pond in the forebay, which is all for the filtration. Okay, there is something in the back, but I can highlight that in a separate slide. Turn the page. All right, so on the left, the inlet of the pond where filtration takes place, right? So I already talked about that before the main pond. So on that one, you can see the main pond right after that berm, yeah. And then in the back, you see a structure. That's the pond outfall structure, so the water leaving the pond, which then will carry through down to the bay through a system of pipes and ditches, which still needs to be worked at. And what I mentioned earlier, where we did have some challenges, but nothing that cannot be overcome, and they're working on that now, and I'll have an update. But again, it's moving fine, and will not be over budget. Turn the page. Hi, Sheriff. So we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. There has been a lot of talk on this, especially when we did the budget right back in January. A lot of people wanted to address the mailboxes. Some came in with some big numbers and some ideas and everything. What I recommended, and obviously it didn't make it within the budget, what I recommended was let us do some work. Let's get some history, just like I did with the roads a couple of years ago. Let's get a feel for it so we know what we're getting into. So, and I said I would update the association and the board and everybody in BNF to see what exactly we're encountering. So the perfect one was the High Sheriff Trail mailbox, because when the pipe went down and there was a cave-in, right, that was several months ago, it affected the mailboxes and we had to move them as well as correct them. So what I did here is this. So we've heard about clusters. I've had people in my office. It took a while for me to understand, or even for them to understand, what exactly a cluster. So from talking to everybody, here's what a cluster is, at least what I've been told. So I highlighted it there, or actually Michelle did it for me on the left there, that yellow piece. So you can see there's several clusters or boxes, and each one of those boxes that makes up that whole, mailbox section is a cluster. Now, some of them have 12, some of them have 16, some have less, but the one on the left, which I believe has 12 is a cluster. The price they're telling me for that is somewhere, I put down $1,600, is somewhere between the $1,600 and $2,000 for the one cluster. The paving, which depends here, we decided to move the mailbox off the main road, take it off the main road. We think it'll work better. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it and one person that didn't like it. So the paving for that was $2,500. If you look on the right, you've heard about these pads, right? And that's the concrete on the bottom. So there's the picture. You can see it on the left. That pad cost us $2,800. What you've heard about is the pedestals, right? And the pedestal, you can see, obviously goes from the concrete pad to the cluster. So if you look at the one in the bottom right corner, the one that's highlighted, and I should have did it in yellow, it's the second one from the right. It's tubular, it's circular or whatever. That's the one we had to have it fabricated. Cost a couple $100. It took some time. The pedestals that are throughout Ocean Pines, which is on the left, is a certain size, and supposedly the mailbox, the post office configured into their standards or whatever, but we could not get that, so we had the pedestal fabricated. So there you go, B&F now, and I'm glad they're here, and the board and everybody else. You can get an idea so that the next time we talk about this, and obviously this doesn't have the pavilion, the roof, the lights, and all the other stuff that is spoken about. But again, I believe this is the way to do anything. Let's get history, let's get some knowledge, and this way then we can figure it out. In the meantime, we will continue to maintain and try where we can to update the mailboxes as I committed, all right?
Hey, John, I have two questions.
Sure.
First, and it's interesting because the forum the other night, two of the candidates were claiming that we own these boxes, and I don't think we do. The post office still owns them. That's why they're not on our asset register. And this would be a cheap project, minimal cost to get it done. Did you put any numbers together for what we're looking at association-wide? If we were to do just the cluster boxes, the pads, the pedestals, and let's not even get into the covering and the lighting and all that stuff.
So first, let me ask the answer to the first thing, because this is a debate, and I'm sure this is going to be, and I have an idea what's going on. The mailboxes themselves, they are not on our fixed asset register. They're not on a fixed asset register. I would think we don't own it. That doesn't mean doesn't have some type of letter that might have happened that I've heard about in the past. I never saw it, that the post office sent to us. I don't know if this is true. It's what I've read. I don't know what that means, quite honestly. The only thing I can tell this board and this association it's not on our books. Okay, the concrete pads are, and that kind of stuff is. The clusters, those mailboxes are not on our books. Like I said, I don't know who owns them, quite honestly. It was my understanding that the post office put these in, that they own them, but that I've read, never saw it, but I've read that there was a letter that they sent to Ocean Pines. So if anybody has to say anything, feel free.
Yeah, when I spoke to the postmistress 4 years ago, she told me that they owned them.
Yeah.
And that if we started maintaining them,
well, that's a correct
then we
statement.
would own them.
Correct statement. And that's something for this board, for this B&F. Of course you want to do them and everything. I do not have the numbers. Like I said, I'm going through a process. I can work it up. I can get a team to do that. It depends also what we want, but I could give you option 1, option 2, option 3. How much for the concrete pads, pedestals? Now, there are pedestals that are rotted. I've seen them. We could start looking at that. If you're talking about replacing all these clusters, obviously we just count them up and then times them by 2,000 or 1,600. We'll try to fine tune the price, but those are the prices I've received. We can do that, but
it's not going to be a cheap proposition.
no.
Hey, just so you know.
I'm sorry. Doug asked first. I'm sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot of, differing information. I reached out to the postmaster last year and asked that same question because we weren't really sure. You're right, it's not on the asset list.
Right.
But according to them, I was told, never got the letter, but there was something back in like 2015 where they granted ownership of the mailboxes to us. Now, I asked her to produce that information, haven't not yet got it, so maybe another inquiry to them, just telling them we're still unsure because we're trying to make plans. Maybe we reach out to them and just finalize that and make sure we got it.
So, and Tom, I know you got to wait. So, but this is along the lines, what I said, let's get some experience, let's get some ideas, and let's see. Now you got some ideas on prices. If you want, to task me or B&F to task me, and I'll start doing that, and we'll get some ideas, or say, hey, these are the ones, we'll rate them, and we'll come up with that. And the options 1, 2, and 3. Tom, I know you had to come.
Well, first off, I mean, I've seen post office out here on a Saturday fixing pedestals. I mean, as late as last year, or as early as last year, they were out actually on a Saturday fixing pedestals in my neighborhood.
Right.
So they're obviously doing it.
Right.
I don't know who requested it. I never got that answer. Secondly, the Environmental and Natural Assets Committee did a whole workup on this with a breakdown with
I have it.
for everything. I know you have the
Right.
whole thing with all the prices. Now, that was 3 years ago, so obviously all the prices are different.
Right.
My third question is, did you have to get the post office permission to move the cluster boxes?
We did not.
Really? You don't have to? Because it seems like it's I mean, I'm just wondering. 'cause it's
I'll check, but I know they know. They do know.
Okay,
If it was a formal permission, but if I can break down your question, one, they do have knowledge of it. If it was a process, that I don't know.
yeah, 'cause, I mean, I'm just
But
wondering.
I'll
'cause,
find out.
You know, messing with the mail is a federal offense. I'm just
Right.
kind of wondering, because when we
Yeah.
looked into it, it was, you had to coordinate with the mail carrier so they could either empty the boxes or
Right.
take them somewhere so they would be
Right.
protected, and then replace the pedestals
Right.
and then put the boxes.
There was definitely communication, but as I mean, as a formal or whatever, I can find out exactly what it was. But you're correct, but we did talk to them.
John, so I just ran a real quick calculation and tried to count the number of clusters there, but it looks like that particular project came in at around $30,000.
No, we did not replace
only
the
did
clusters.
one.
I'm sorry. We did not replace the clusters.
Okay.
We had to replace the concrete, I'm sorry? Right, I'm just pricing it out, I'm just trying to give you some ideas. We
gotcha.
had to redo the concrete pad, the blacktop. I mean, it's right in the same place, it's right there. We replaced that one pedestal. We did not touch the mailboxes.
Okay, gotcha, because I
Nor
multiplied
will I
16
until I get approval from the board or we find out exactly what the deal is with it.
Gotcha, now I understand, thank you.
But, you know, we can start that, and we can use the template from what Tom mentioned from 3 years ago. I definitely have a copy of that. Okay, good. Turn page. All right, roads, right? So it came in, you received approval on the roads, just highlighting it. It was not started yet. I'm being told the end of June, but it's everything that I came forward with last time that you gave me approval to. 220 in the budget, came out to around 208, 210. The price per mile, it was 2.24 miles. Those are the roads, $93,000 a mile. So we said go with it, right? The price was good considering everything else is going on. So we did that. Then the question comes about the roads. I think it was Larry or somebody had a question last time for me. I'll address on that what I see going forward so you get a heads up for next time or questions, okay? DMA study, I had given a range from the beginning on when we believe we would have this done. I was hoping for the earlier part of the range. It looks like it's going to be the back end of the range. DMA Green, he is busy, but he has committed to. So the final draft report was due the end of May, but has been postponed. New target date is the end of June. Most likely BNF presentation will be the beginning of July. Linda feels confident with that. We do have some pieces already, and then hopefully this is all done by the July board meeting, but if not, it'll be August. I mean, it's not a make or break if it's July or August, okay? Drafts of the bulkheads and the roads, as mentioned last time, she has, but we're waiting on DMA. Turn the
And
page.
John, if it's not in July, it won't be till September.
Oh, because of
August
the
will
annual
be-
meeting, you're right, Larry, which is fine. I mean, unless somebody feels very strong about it, but I'm okay with that. I tried to adhere to what BNF had been requesting, but as long as we have it before the next budget process, it's fine. I don't see anything major that's going to affect us, at least not that I've seen. All right, turn the page. What do you want me to do? The bottom, the D. This. Yeah, I got to do it. PPP? Oh, he's got to turn, okay, so I have some news. So, and in fact, I know the CFO asked me the other day, but so the PPP, I had mentioned last time, I believe it was 60 days. The Small Business Administration had 60 days to get back to the companies or those that had applied for the PPP. We put in all our paperwork, which I had mentioned before, the forgiveness application and backup support provided to the Bank of Ocean City in mid-March. The Bank of Ocean City provided an application of support to SBA on 3/16. So look at that, 60 days. 90 days, I'm sorry, 90 days. So PPP, Bank of Ocean City contacted me the other day, told me that they had received in their system that we had received forgiveness I wanted to wait till we got the official letter. Steve just received it. So Ocean Pines has received an official letter of forgiveness sent by SBA and has been received by Ocean Pines and confirmed by Reed in a phone call to me. So the PPP has been forgiven.
John, will this have any effect on the audit for the fiscal year?
So, an excellent question. So on the audit, as I had mentioned earlier, to define the effect on it is this. It would be basically the way we've been presenting and the way we've accounted for it throughout the year. So it would be revenue, right? And it would be a loan that's forgiven. So this is income, this would be operating, which would be offset by salary. So to answer your question specifically from what I reported and what we did all year, it wouldn't have a change there. And obviously there would be a footnote.
Right, because we're working under the premise the whole time that the PPP
Correct.
would be forgiven before the end of the fiscal
Exactly.
year.
So if
Okay.
if it hadn't been forgiven, as I had mentioned, then I would have had to
Right.
change the statements. Or if we didn't receive notice, which we felt we would because of the time frame. But if we hadn't, then we would leave it the way it is, and we would just footnote it. But I'm sure there'll be a footnote in there that'll work out with Chris, with the auditors. Okay, so forgiven, the numbers that I'll report tonight, again, unaudited numbers, and what I've been presenting to BNF and everybody else is pretty consistent with where we'll be as an association. And then we did talk about reallocations or transfers or whatever, not for tonight, but I would like to talk to BNF about that. It's pretty much what I had recommended to the board and BNF before. But that would be, after the audit, maybe after. So obviously, let me do the P&L and then I'll tie it all together for you.
So the mechanics of this money is being carried over to this fiscal year, or are we going to be able to?
Well, all right, no, it's a good question. So we finished the year. And when I do the P&L, it's pretty consistent with what I've told everybody, what our surplus to budget is. And you'll see today it's pretty consistent. It's unaudited. If we do nothing, because I got this and already, somebody says I owed them a lunch or whatever, which is fine. If we do nothing, just mechanically, but from an accounting standpoint, that money, those earnings rolls over into our retained earnings. So we do still have, and I think it's $165,000 deficit. It would automatically, because obviously it goes into the same account, it would turn that positive. Okay, what I had said in a prior update, which I was called out to on the press and everything, was when I talked about reallocations to fund these other budgets or these other reserves, I had mentioned we can also reallocate or transfer to that. I meant with the budget, okay? But rest assured, I know, the mechanics, it would automatically go in there to offset that deficit. But what I was saying is we didn't fund in this last assessment for 2022 a specific number, which we had been mandated by, to pay down the operating deficit, which was around $165,000. We said that this surplus, we were confident with that like we did last year, right? Back in March or February, and we said we believed we had enough to cover it. All right, hopefully everybody's got that. Okay, and then then the other pieces, but that's for us to discuss. Then this board or BNF recommends, I'm certainly going to come forward and say, hey, some of this surplus, let's roll it into these other reserves, especially the roads that we utilize that money, and let's continue. And look, I always know it does have an effect on the assessment, but mechanically it did not have. Okay.
So the good news is the deficit that we were operating under the last few years is now done.
It's zero. If anything, you got a surplus.
Right.
Now, let's clear this up and make sure that I'm saying it the right way. All the PPP money was used for payroll. And obviously, they checked it. They asked us for information. We gave them everything. Every dollar of the PPP money was used for payroll, which was the whole idea of their program, of the program. We had adhered to that 100%. We do have a surplus, but the surplus was also because we cut costs. We did other things because we didn't want to have what I call the runaway freight train. I wanted to make sure we would have the cash, right? We can all go back to kind of this time last year where we weren't sure with a lot of things. So there were cutbacks. We couldn't do certain things because of COVID. That all caused, and I'll update tonight, but I've been updating. Those are the reasons why we had the surplus. The PPP money was used exactly for, and obviously, because if we didn't, it wouldn't have been forgiven. Strictly payroll, okay? All right, good. All right, forget this, so I got something on the top. So finance, North Star. North Star is, one step forward, you take a step back, you turn around. But so seems whenever there's an upgrade, and, Josh can attest to the last one because it affected the website, and, Josh was all over it, as well as the whole team on everything. But they had an upgrade last weekend and didn't go well. And what happens is the same thing, and I know it caused it. So what happens is whatever we had specifically for us, customized or was part of the original program, that's unique to Ocean Pines, when they do their upgrades, somehow they get dropped off. Now, obviously, these upgrades are for all their customers. And look, I can just tell you what I believe is happening, what we're seeing, and what Tracy, now our new IT person, is telling me is they were dropped, whether that's when they update whatever file or whatever. Tracy is on it. Tracy, that's his main role right now. He's all over it. He said to me, John, as he was talking to them, he'd see what we had originally changed and dropped off coming back. So they got some challenges on their end. Obviously, it's affecting us. Not pleased, but we're working through it. What does that mean for us? Well, as I've mentioned all year, we're slow to get the efficiencies that you would get with a system. Eventually we will, hopefully. The other thing is rework. Anytime there's rework is taking the team more work, and I'm allocating resource, especially in finance, as well as my department heads, to rework this stuff as opposed to doing other stuff. Any questions on that?
John?
Oh, I'm sorry.
John.
No,
When do we get to the point of no return on this?
Thank
I mean,
you.
it starts, at some point in time, we're starting to expend so much money on payroll from our own department and our own people. And this has been 3 years going on with North Star, or 2.5. And it was guaranteed in 6 months that it was going to be running everything. And every time something new comes up, they update it, and it's getting worse. I'm just asking, I haven't really delved into it. I'm not a big IT person, but it seems like every time we, like you said, one step forward, two steps back, every single time. I just don't understand how long we're going to continue putting out money into this system until it actually starts to function, if it ever does.
Yeah.
And John, that was my question as well.
Yeah,
'Cause
no,
I've talked to some staff over the weekend who were really, really, really frustrated because they want to do a good job. And so can you help us understand this?
Yeah, well, first, can you help me out? When you say you talk to staff, who did you speak to?
When I was over at the yacht club over the weekend, they were talking about the frustration that they had with North Star, just in general.
So at the yacht club, I mean, we're not using the point of sale system from North Star. So I know they had frustrations with it. We all did. It wasn't as advertised, but we took it out. They have their systems that they recommended, and they've had them. And so I'm not totally sure at the yacht club, but I meet with all our department heads and everything. I've asked them the question that Tom asked. I've gotten phone calls from the outside. I say that we need to stay with it. When you say cost, though, it's not costing us money for North Star. We're not giving them more money. It is costing us in time. I'm not going to deny that, but more in the sense of the efficiencies that I thought we would have. There are benefits here that we didn't have with the other system. This system is integrated. That's a big one. The finance side, the reporting side is more robust. But again, that doesn't mean the other system we had couldn't have done it. It just was never done, and nobody spent the money over the years. But there are benefits to where we were at with the other system. And again, I want to make this clear. It wasn't that the other system couldn't do it. For whatever reason over the years, whoever was in charge, they just didn't explore it or spend the money for whatever reason. So we need to continue. This is a toll on me as much as anybody. to shift gears on this right now, and again, remember, there was no one system out there that fits all here. So I say we stay the way we go. The full team, at least our team in that admin building, is saying the same. Okay. No, but good questions. Anybody else, anything? Doug, did you have a question? No?
No.
Okay, so, and I'll continue to update. I mean, please, there are benefits to it, especially to the finance side. It is integrated. This piece is unfortunate. This is on them. This is a growing pain on their end. Once we get through this and with time, hopefully we're there. But look, I'm not in here to make excuses for them or to defend them or anything else. I'm trying to answer the questions. Okay? All right, turn the page. All right, Yacht Club rocking. What was this, Saturday? I was there Saturday. I didn't take the pictures. I know Julie was there. I know Josh was somewhere else. It was even more crowded than this when she took these pictures. The place was packed. Obviously, it was Transfusion. Madawaska reported the highest grossing volume of sales ever on that day. It was over $56,000. The place was packed. The tables, there was well, I don't know, it wasn't bad. I mean, the tables were turned over. I mean, it was really good. It was a really good night. I mean, it was very good. All right, so I just wanted to show that. I mean, that was really a good start. Turn the page, Racket Sports this weekend also. I was there. I know Josh was there taking pictures. Debbie, Tim, Terry. There was over 250, well, around 250 pickleball players in a tournament from all over. It was, I don't play pickleball or any racket sports. It looked pretty impressive to me. Everybody was having a great time. It was well organized. It was well done. We put some numbers up there. Debbie gave me some stats and some numbers so that you can see. Keep in mind that the way this thing has been working for years is that the committees, they're not the official advisory committee, but the committee's there for pickleball. They run this thing, apparently. They've been given carte blanche on it. And you can see what they made, and they pay us a rental fee of $500 apparently in the past and this year, which was agreed upon. So that's what it is. I mean, it was awesome. All right? Turn the page. All right, the marina had a couple of rainy days. Memorial Day weekend, as I mentioned before, it affected us all over. Obviously, he's not going to get that back. He doesn't make that up another day, but he is doing real well. He's given me some numbers, and it looks like the marina and everything, weather permitting, that he's made right decisions as far as how he's purchased the fuel and what he's been doing. Rec and Parks, summer camp starts the 21st. I know Kyle is here tonight in our backup program, and Josh is showing him as far as the video audio. Kyle has a background in it, a very strong background. He had recommended when we were interviewing he'd like to be a part of it, and this is all with the backup program. And you can see Justin's here tonight too, where we're training everybody in cross-training and using their experience. So that's working out real well. As far as Rec and Parks, she's open. Carl could tell you too. I mean, it's basically open business as usual. I think the only thing that she's not is not open is the movie night, but that has nothing to do. That's a separate thing as far as royalties or whatever it's called. So the fireworks, she's working on that. The team's working on it. We hope to have fireworks for the 4th of July, and everything else is back on track for Rec and Parks. Turn the page. Okay, so this gentleman is here to my left, Justin Hartshorne. I just wanted to introduce him first. Justin, in talking about our backup, and at golf, we identified last year that John did not have a backup. In fact, he was kind of thin on his staff. He's fully staffed now. We have a strong pro shop. Justin was hired for, I guess, a year and a half ago, was given the superintendent job last year. Justin comes with a broad background, which I just wanted to use to introduce him. Justin also, we're going to give him, obviously his plate is full plus for the golf course, but he will be also cross-training with John, so that we have more backup in the pro shop. He's certainly qualified. Just some highlights: almost 20 years of golf maintenance experience. Graduated from Penn State University with a bachelor's degree in turf grass science, Maryland certifications with pesticide applications, licenses. You can see it's all there. I don't need to read it. Very strong background. He's also a very good golfer, by the way. So welcome, Justin. I'm glad to have you here to present. Let everybody see what you're doing down there, because you're doing great stuff. You and the team.
Yeah. Thank you for having me here to speak a little bit about what we're doing down in golf. I'm very excited for this year. Obviously, the course is in great shape right now, and I just wanted to touch on some of the things we're doing that are helping us achieve better conditions around the golf course. So to start, I just want to touch on aerification. Everyone has probably seen aerification, is pretty familiar with that, but it's one of the most important things we can do throughout the year to help with course conditions. So you see there the aerifier, we pull cores out of the greens, and then we pick them up. Once we finish cleaning the cores up, we actually put a bunch of sand on the greens there. We'll broom it in, brush it in, blow it in. The goal is to fill the holes up when we're completely done. That way, everything heals quicker. Grass isn't going to grow into thin air, so we try to get all those sand channels filled up all the way to the top. And it just gives places for water to move through the soil profile, helps get oxygen down in there, and just helps with the quicker recovery when we're finished with that. There's another picture there. It just kind of shows at the end it's okay to be a little dusty. You can see the holes in the front there, trying to get them completely filled. That's the goal with moving that sand around. So you're going to see it there for a few days following that. And it just really helps get that oxygen into the soil profile. Now, when we do punch those holes, it looks like we tear up and rototill the entire green surface. Anyone who's seen that? But actually, if you take all those holes and push them into one corner of the green, we're actually only impacting anywhere from 5 to 10% of the actual surface area of the green, which is why you need to continue doing that. The USGA does recommend every year to kind of maintain and keep up with thatch levels. You want to disrupt around 20% of your surface. So by doing 2 aerifications a year, which we have on the schedule, we can get close to that number. Maybe we're getting 14, 15%, which is why we're also adding some other practices into our operation here to help us achieve more of 20% disruption so that we continue getting oxygen into the profile. And top dressing is a great way to do that as well. It's just a light dusting of sand. So anyone that's played this spring has certainly probably encountered this. We've been doing it weekly to help maintain conditions. That helps dilute the thatch, and just as the grass grows and you mow it and cut it, you get a little bit of dead plant material and just added growth up at the surface. That all builds up as the plant's growing and reproducing. So you want to get that sand in there to just keep that pore space open up top. It allows oxygen, air movement, and just light levels to help maintain and control that as the plant grows. It kind of also gives a barrier at the crown of the plant, which is right at the soil level, which is where all the magic happens with the plant. So you want to protect that. So it's helping with foot traffic, with ball marks flying in. We're just trying to add a layer of sand to pad that area. And it also helps with smoothness and firmness when you're putting on them. There's kind of a close-up. You want to try to get that texture standing straight up on the green surface. We want them to be as smooth as possible. And when the plant's laid over, and it gets all kind of leggy is how I call it. When it's laid over, folded over, we're trying to get them standing up more like that picture with this top dressing, getting that plant going straight up in the air. Because a lot of plants standing straight up gives you a lot more material. If a few plants die here and there, like you still have a solid base underneath the plant. So helps tighten everything up. Something we've added this year is the Ninja Tines. So right there's a picture of it. Now it's like aerification, but just with a much smaller tine. It's a lot less disruptive. I know a lot of guys have probably played behind it and hardly know we've done it. Once we get it cleaned up and rolled behind, it's not nearly as disruptive to play as aerification is. And it's still helping us remove some of that material in the top couple inches of the profile. So once we punch them, we blow them off, and then we do some top dressing behind. But that's kind of what a green looks like once we get across it. It's not as much material as aerification, but we're still removing some of that thatch and material up top to create some extra pore space for a lot of that water and air movement that we're stressing this year. Yep.
So let's just talk about this because the situation we've had for over the last, I don't know, 5, 7 years, and I know Tom asked me last year about this black stuff, right? Anybody that's been there, this black stuff, is that the right way to say it, or?
Yeah, so you can get like some black layer when you start trapping too much moisture up on the top.
So this black stuff, or this thing, this thatch that has built up over 5, 10 years, the Ninja Tines is helping to break that through. And it's like Justin said, this way they can still play on it. The golfers can still play, as opposed to when we do with the normal aerating or whatever. But we're trying to break that. And that's about how many inches thick? 2.5, 3?
Yeah, so we're trying to go like 2 inches.
So he's breaking that, and it's a process, as I mentioned. But I asked Justin a couple of weeks ago, because I wanted to update everybody. Look, we're doing the best we can. Obviously, when August and September, and that place is looking fabulous and better than it normally looks at this time. But I asked Justin, I said, okay, and he's going to talk about today, what are you going to do different for them for that August? And where are we? So Justin believes, and I'll let him correct me or add on to this, he believes we're 1/3 of the way there.
Yeah.
Well, what
we're
we've been
making-
breaking this thatch. Go ahead, you jump
Yeah.
in and tell them.
And we're making progress, and it's going to take time because we're disrupting a lot of the surface, but we're not touching everything on there, so we're still going to encounter some of these stress periods. Now we need to continue these practices, the Ninja Tines, the top dress, and it's going to help us. So you're going to see drastic improvement in reducing your thatch. Within 3 to 4 years, you're going to help. Now everything we're doing is creating space for water and oxygen to move through the profile, which is going to help. And we'll touch on that at the end, but it is going to be a consistent process, and we've done a nice job, and my crew's done a fantastic job of running with this and consistently working it into our maintenance routine. So we want to make sure we continue these practices on a very consistent basis. It's a necessity, not just something we're going to do when it's convenient. It's something we are doing in the program. And this is another one here that we've added, verticutting, which you can use the reels, but it's kind of like a saw blade that cuts the surface. So anyone's out there seen that, you'll see long channels that go the whole way across the green there. And that just does like the top like 1/2 inch. This is a very shallow process that just cuts the thatch at the surface and removes it. But it does cut a channel out, remove some of that material, and then we top dress behind to fill those channels in just to keep that sand in the profile, because that just helps with draining. There's some of the material you see on the green that we've picked up just by scratching the surface. This is another one that once we blow everything off, roll or mow behind, it's not very disruptive to golf. So we've been able to incorporate that a lot more. Obviously, this is a practice here with the verticutting. It touches a lot of the surface area. So that is something we'll back off of in July, August a little bit. We'll be leaning more on the Ninja Tines that time of year because it's a lot less stressful on the surface. But yeah, we're going to try to do this at least twice in the spring minimum and probably twice in the fall. But as long as we're seeing quick recovery behind it, we'll continue doing it until the weather gets too hot. Yep, there's a picture there of all the material we pulled up. That's the third green on the left there. So that's kind of what it looks like when we're done with the verticutter. And then we blow it off and put some sand on. That's on the right. And it kind of smooths out nice. And it's pretty nice to play on actually from behind. I haven't heard too many complaints actually about playing behind that. So I think a lot of people don't really seem to notice it. So it's been cleaning up nice once we're done with that.
So in addition to all this, and what Justin and his team is doing, some changes is the way he waters.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a whole different approach on how to watering sometimes, and too much water is not a good thing. So Justin and his team, and I think Kirk or whatever, you'll see them on the weekends and everything. They monitor this to make sure that there's never too much water. Also, he'll show you some drainage that he's doing, as well as other drainage that we talked about over 1.5 years ago, where we fixed that whole, we're almost done, that whole drainage system under that golf course. And it's all helped. And with that, we're able to cut the rough. The rough's way better. And then obviously the mower that was approved and paid for by the association has helped, and everybody now wants to play the course. Anything else on here besides this?
So, no, that's perfect. Yeah, we'll get into, I think, drainage is next year. Yeah, so here we go. We've been doing a lot of work with the drainage system. There's a lot of drain pipes on the golf course already existing, so we're just trying to locate those caps because they get grown over, you lose them sometimes. So here's actually the 15th fairway in that picture. You can see there's a drain cap up in that top left corner. There's a bunch of dirt around there, but we were taking hoses and we run them down inside the drain pipes and turn the irrigation on and run that pressure through there. And we're trying to just clean sand, debris, just over the years, leaves, material, stuff gets in those basins up top. So we've just been trying to clean those systems out. So it's worked very well on 15, and we're going to add some drainage to 15 as well. We still have some areas that we're just going to need to replace some pipe. But areas where we can blow them out and clean them, we're certainly trying to take advantage of that because there's existing pipe in the ground and a lot of it's still good. So we're only replacing what we absolutely need to replace out there. And here's a section we're replacing. So what we do is we just we'll run a trencher through, remove that material, we'll get some pipe in the ground, and then if it's perforated pipe, which has holes in it, we put gravel around it so that the water and the soil can get into the pipe. There's also sections of the golf course where we're going to run just solid pipe with some basins. It'll just move water out quickly in some low areas. We just need to catch it at the basin and move it out. So there's two different kinds of pipe that we will be putting in the ground and tying that system together. But yeah, the goal is to just get the water off the playing surfaces as quick as we possibly can.
Right. Is that 18?
So yeah, that's by 18 there.
So that's 18. So these are more like what I call French drains, and they'll lead into the main drainage that's been there since day one, which is just amazing, the maze of drainage that was there. Now, a lot of it had failed. I mean, in compliments to Andre. Andre took me around. He showed me all the stuff a couple of years ago, and we've been, we had some public works people down there. We did some stuff, Andre. We fixed all the main pipes. There's maybe one left, and now Justin's going to continue with these French drains, and it's worked fabulous.
Yeah, and we're just adding to a lot of existing lines that are out there because some of them still work because the square basin at the bottom of this picture is an existing box that exits to the right of that cart path. So all we did was add to pick up some more wet areas that we're seeing where it wasn't getting all the way down to the basin on the bottom there. So we're just expanding these areas, adding pipe where we need to. Anything that's not getting off the property, we're able to just go out and catch it with some added pipe in a few areas here and there. Yeah, I just want to touch, here's some additional things we're also doing. That's a lot of the mechanical stuff that I showed you there. But we're using a lot of wetting agents in our chemical program now. And wetting agents, they help you move that water through the soil profile chemically. So it's almost like a soap type of product, but really helps move water uniformly down through the profile. So we're incorporating those in the spray program every 2 weeks, just to also help move that water off the surface and get it down. We've been doing more with deep tine aerification, and we also have a vertiquake, which those two units hook onto a tractor and they punch deeper holes in the fairways and tees. We've done it on 8 and 9 fairway and have seen some drastic improvements after rainfalls because we're punching some channels down in there and letting that water get off the surface and down into the soil and down into some of the existing drains, because there are some drains in 8 and 9 as well. They were just kind of sealed off up top, so we're just opening up some channels to let water get back down into the drainage system that's there. And then John touched on this too, the irrigation operation and hand watering. That changes on a daily basis. Weather conditions drastically impact how the golf course dries out, moves water around. So we monitor that daily. We're doing a lot of hand watering on the greens. Right now, typically the only time heads are running on the greens is if I'm trying to water in either a spray application or sand or agronomics. But for just watering to maintain the playing surface, we're doing all that by hand on the greens right now. And that's helping us keep a much more consistent playing surface because we're just watering small spots. There's some greens that you only go out and you might only touch a small area of it. You don't have to water the entire green. And that's going to help us balance the water content across the entire profile. And then the other big one here is soil testing. We're doing a lot more of that this year. I should be getting some results back actually next week of some I just took. The golf course looks great right now, but you can always do something better. We might not see it because it's growing good now, but I just want to make sure that all the nutrients that we have or need in the profile are there. So the test, even with the course looking good, could reveal some stuff that I might want to do before we get into July and August here. And then we'll take tests again probably in July as well, because I would like to know if I have to do any inputs following that aerification in August. And so it's just going to give me a lot of extra information that you're not just going to see by physically looking at it. It'll help to have some scientific data backing up why we're doing some of the applications we're doing out there. Yep, and so right here, yeah, our ultimate goal is improve plant health. So that picture on the left is May 31st of last year, and the root system is not very deep. You can see some of that layering there. That picture on the right is like May 20th this year. You can see that root system is driving much deeper right now, and it's just much thicker. There's a lot more roots in that profile. You can still see some of that soil discoloration. And that's why this process needs to continue. We're gonna continue punching holes, putting that sand in, verticutting, top dressing. We're just gonna continue and grow on those practices that we're implementing right now. But right now, this is exciting. Like that's, you wanna see those roots drive. I'd love to see them go deeper and deeper, but it's good to see that we're making some progress with the root system, and that's gonna help us when we get into that July and August stress. So that's really the goal this year, is collecting as much data as we can, adding those practices in, and really just trying to keep that root system moving water and keep oxygen in that profile so they can stay healthy.
So Justin, so obviously, the roots never were really fully taken, and now.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, because we're trying to open up those air channels with the solid tines, the top dress and the aerification, because when that profile stays wet and that thatch layer up top, the roots are only going to go as deep as they can find water, because that's all they're looking for. So the wetting agents, the hand watering, we're trying to keep things much drier to force those roots to go look for water down in the profile. Once you get like through those top couple inches of our soil profile, you can stick a soil probe in the ground and it's straight sand down to the gravel. So, you get the roots to go through that. There's a lot of room down there to get some deep roots. And that's really what we're after here.
So with the deeper roots and the longer roots, obviously when the time comes in July, August, it'll be stronger and it'll be able to withstand the tough environment.
Yeah, it'll do much better under stress. And you'll feel it underfoot. Like they've felt firmer this spring than they have in the past, because that root system is bulky, it's deep, it's healthy. Like the plant is more stable. And that's really what you want in the stress, because you're going to put less stress then with play and practices, even mowing, things we're doing, puts a lot less stress on the plant when it's very stable and has a good root base.
I got to tell you, Justin, in my mind, first off, the course is in great shape. I played today. But last Saturday, after all the rain we had a couple days ahead of time, and I think it was about 3 inches of rain, if I'm correct, and we were able to drive on the course on Saturday, I can tell you we're good. The golfers are still talking about how amazed they were that they were able to drive on the course on Saturday. Someone said to me today that Glenn Riddle, they were just able to get back on the course yesterday. So I think everything you're doing, all the work, all the drainage work, John, that you guys have put into this, I mean, we're seeing fantastic results already. And, again, I think the real test is going to be this July and August to see how we do. And I'm confident with everything I've seen so far, we're going to be in great shape. So thank you, and thank your team.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think we're doing the right things. We have the right tools. The team has been on board, so we're making a lot of progress. So we're still probably going to, there's always a battle in there somewhere, but we're making a lot of progress.
Okay, any other questions for Justin? Okay, Justin, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Okay. Financials. All right, so where are we? So month of April, again, unaudited. I should have put unaudited up there. I thought I did, but they're unaudited. But this is pretty much, we're through the audit. So for the month of April, where were we? Where did we wind up? So revenues were favorable, 148,000. Expenses were unfavorable by around 202,000 for a net 54,000 unfavorable. So what caused that? So the good thing on the revenues, yacht club, clubhouse, Grill, Yacht Club around 35,000 favorable, and the revenues clubhouse around 20,000. Beach parking around 19,000. The beach parking was more on timing with the Secrets lease. Obviously, I guess we closed out that lease a little later than we normally did, and it just hit the month of April. So it was timing offset as far as favorability to the budget. The right-of-way Comcast, so Steve trued that up, so we do get money from that, somewhere in the neighborhood of 150, 160,000, so we recognize 31,000. Favorable to budget, but again, I would, there is some favorability, but some of it's timing also, and there was some miscellaneous pertaining to the CARES Act, right? We talked about that, the Affordable CARES Act, we received some money that month, and obviously we didn't budget for that. On the expense side, which was unfavorable, we did have some new capital for video audio equipment for HVACs at the Yacht Club. We needed to work there. I did give updates on that. Yacht Club payroll, there was a 5-week payroll, so obviously there was more in there for payroll, and I guess we didn't budget for that 5th week and for that 5th payroll. Terra Firma, so we talked about that, and I got approval. We fixed the cracks and painted the pickleball courts, which hadn't been done in years, so that was not in the budget. So that was an unfavorable charge of around 35,000. Some court maintenance down there. Also, apparently, we got hit twice for the court maintenance for the Hard True courts. The bill for the prior year came in there. I'm not sure why that wasn't accrued for, but that happened. So I had unfavorability there. Legal expenses, $16,000. Legal's been talked about and it's been in the papers. I updated the papers, but I'll be glad to talk about legal. But that was unfavorable to the tune of around 16,000. There was short-term rental stuff in there. And then golf, and again, this is timing in a sense, and Justin and I spoke, and John. So what happened was and that's why I missed the mark of what I've been forecasting for golf, but still certainly within a realm. But there was probably around $40,000 of chemicals and other maintenance that Justin and his team did in April, which might have usually came about in May, June, but because of the timing of he's going to jump in and the weather, but he'll explain it to you what happened.
I can touch on that, but so when we do our pre-emergent control for a lot of weeds and then grub and insect activity, a lot of that's driven by soil temps. So the weather kind of shifts and changes some of those applications. So I know we had it budgeted in May, but we ended up seeing the weather favorable for those applications in April. And that's not a window that you want to miss. So that's what kind of happened with that application there. So you just have to make sure you get that out when the soil temps are telling you it needs to go out.
Yeah, so Justin, and the same thing with John, they certainly have my support, even though I missed my number, but it is timing, and it was certainly the right thing to do. And as we learn, lessons learned, we'll be able to adjust with that with the budgets. But it's timing. It was the right thing to do, as well as other things at the golf course, racket sports, and everywhere else. We're doing a lot of what you all called, the board called, or Frank called, deferred maintenance that hadn't been done in years, and we're catching up on that. But there's a cost to that. But we're seeing the offside as the revenue, okay?
John, so that we ought to see a positive impact in May on those chemicals and.
The answer to that is yes. I mean, it may not be dollar for dollar, but the answer is yes. We already looked at that. Believe me, I was in there in the controller's office as well as down at golf. You might have saw me down there, yes. It was the right thing. He's got my complete support on it. Tom?
Did you say we put in new audio and video equipment in the yacht club?
No, I'm sorry if that came across. No, the audio and video was, and I talked about that just before the yacht club. So no, the audio video is in the admin building as well as some other stuff with the video. The yacht club was the HVAC systems.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I combined. I said it quick. Okay. All right. So that's your month. Let's see a little more detail. That was a breakout on the revenues and expenses. Let's break it down. Let's go turn the page. Okay, year to date, these numbers are pretty much in tune with where I've been presenting the last several months with forecasts. We've pretty much been there. I almost don't even need my notes for it. But so we're favorable, $1,275,000. I mean, the best way to explain this one is to give the detail by department and by amenity at this point. And it's pretty much, you'll see what I've been updating you all. But if you take that 1,275,000, right, let's just talk numbers, and I gave you schedules on this last month. If you take the PPP money, 1,000,001, just round numbers, it was 1,143,000. If you take the money that the Matt Company received for PPP, which was around 275, just round it for me to the 0.3, right? So with 1.1 rounded to 0.3, that's 1.4. And we received about 125,000, and we still, as you heard me update a little earlier on the Affordable Care Act, we received somewhere around 120, Steve told me this morning. So that kind of rounds out to 1.5, right? So you take the 1.5, if we didn't receive any of that money, and you take that number up there, let's say, my head and the way I've been doing it all year was 1,250,000. What would we have done if we hadn't received any money stimulus? So we would have lost 250,000. Okay? All right, just an FYI.
Stimulus or PPP?
So the PPP is a stimulus.
Okay.
So
I
PPP,
just
the
wanted to make
Affordable
sure.
Care, yeah. So the
Okay, thanks.
PPP is a stimulus, but yeah, the payroll protection plan. All right, the Affordable Care Act, and obviously the Matt Company also got the PPP. Okay, good. Turn page. Let's get into some detail. Let's look at the operations. This is always, as Jason gets excited about the roots and all that, Passionatic is excited about this stuff. So where am I? All right, the 54,000 for the month. So this breaks out. You can see where the favorability or the unfavorability was. We talked about, let's just jump around a little bit, golf ops and maintenance, the 48,000, we touched on that one, right? So I'll call it timing. It definitely was the right thing to do. General maintenance, unfavorable. We talked about that we fixed the cracks, we painted, we did a lot of deferred maintenance that hadn't been done for a while at the racket sports, right? And the board approved that. Yacht club, there were some items in there that I mentioned. Grill was favorable, and the grill is, there's been some pretty good stuff going on down there as well as everywhere else with food and beverage and everything else. Tennis unfavorable, the marinas, other. The public works, again, it was mostly salaries. We had a hard time filling positions. That was addressed with the next budget, and it's pretty much where we're at. So we were unfavorable 54,000. That's the month, unaudited. Turn the page. That's the budget. Okay, and there's the 1,275, right? So it kind of shifted the schedule a little bit on me. So normally I started off with general admin. That's on the bottom. That's where the PPP money is, 1,072,000. So that's basically with a lot of other offsets. But that's where your PPP money is, the 1,143,000, as well as the Affordable Care Act and some other stuff. So that's favorability to budget since we didn't have that in there. We now know that that's revenue, thus operating revenue that offset the payroll expenses with that. So basically, that is the 1,275,000. The PPP for the food and beverage, that one was, unlike everything else, that was included with the yacht club in the amenity. And we elected to do that from the beginning. So that's where that is. Public Works, the 364 in maintenance, that favorability throughout the year. Salaries, there were several positions that could not be filled. We couldn't get the laborers. With the COVID, there was a time there where we weren't able to do certain projects and work. We tried to catch up at the end, which you saw, and why I had some unfavorability in the month. So that was a lot of what drove the favorability there. The rec and parks, the 97,000. So with it being shut down and rec and parks, where there is expense there, that is not a revenue-driven operation. It never is, nowhere. So we had favorability in expense because obviously we cut back. Debbie and her team, we had a plan from the very beginning, as well as others, and that's why we had the savings there. Aquatics, well, aquatics, a couple of things, but keep in mind, right, it was only 20, and like food and beverage and everywhere else, but they went through a period with limitations on how many people can actually use aquatics, right? Okay, golf ops, kind of talked about that. Yacht club, unfavorable. Again, the COVID, I hate to say, but it's COVID. The beach parking got hit hard, but I got to tell you, beach parking has rebounded tremendously. But I'll talk about that when I'm done with this. Racket sports, the marinas, he did very well. Finance, there was an open position there that they've subsequently filled. Public relations, they brought in some more revenue. We did cut back on promotions, obviously, for COVID. Josh and Julie and they were favorable on the promotion revenue that they brought in also. So all good stuff there. Police, there was some openings there. And there's your 1,275,000. Any questions on that, Doug?
Yeah, John, real quick, based on the Public Works number, and I know you had, staffing issues because unavailability for labor, and has any of the maintenance, that didn't get done because of that labor shortage, do you have any kind of priorities or concerns that, now that we have a labor force and now that we're not restricted by any COVID restrictions, areas that you think are focused, that might have not gotten addressed last year, but, is on your radar for this year?
So it's a good question. So a couple of things. One, we've been doing it at Racket Sports. We kind of got in there a little early in April. Want to do more there. That's one that's just jumping up. The Beach Club, you can see too, and they kind of baked in those numbers or whatever. We were able to start doing some work there that we couldn't do in the beginning, and we caught up with that. We just couldn't get anybody to do it, or the numbers were crazy high. So some of it also is the drainage, and we have kept up on that, but I'd like to see more there with the team.
Okay.
And then the admin building over there, obviously the admin wasn't done and we put that off. We had planned to do stuff there, as you all know, and we put that off.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no, good question. Anybody else? Anything? This is pretty much it for the year. I'm sure in August we'll have more detail. Okay, so then with that, I don't have a slide. I don't believe I have a slide in there, but may flash, right? So I always said, if I don't have it, at least I'll give you some idea on where we are, and we'll call it a flash. So Steve and I went through a couple of things this morning. So just to give a highlight on it is this: May's coming in favorable. What we're seeing is a couple of things that what's trending, what's pretty neat. We had record-breaking applications or payments for memberships across the board: golf, racket sports, swimming, whatever. Record-breaking. Now, record-breaking for people coming in the door in May and June. That could subside towards the end of June and July, and it might be balanced. So I'm going to say that we're trending higher than 2 years ago, but some of it's timing, that they're just coming in early. So hopefully we'll have better numbers on that, but that's where we're trending, and that's a really good sign. Okay, so we're tracking ahead of time. The beach parking is, they're buying them, the golf, the memberships. Food and beverage is up. You've probably heard Ralph say it, or we've said it in prior ones. I believe they have $500,000 booked in banquets. Right, so we didn't have nothing with COVID last year. So Ralph, the team, Matt, I hope I'm not missing anybody. They all have that. Leah, they have that. That's positive. I just showed you that Yacht Club was rocking last weekend. So everything is showing positive. Golf course. John showed me the rounds. We went through the rounds the other day. Everything's up from last year. We did a little bit. It was a little slow in the beginning because of the COVID, but they're coming. All right, any questions on that as far as the flash? But we will be favorable for the month, I can tell you that. All right, that's all I got.
All right, Doug, treasurer's report.
All right, next slide, please. So for the month of April, you'll notice our cash position is $15.5 million, which is interesting that John had just mentioned that, because last month at the end of March, we were at $11.9 million. So some of the people that have paid their assessments have obviously caused us to increase that. You see the breakdown that we normally give, that the $9.5 million is in CDARS and $6 million is in other money market vehicles. And again, that's just, it's interesting that that number has gone up that much. So I guess part of it is COVID. People are a little more open to the amenities and obviously paying their assessments. So next slide. So as I've been doing for the entire fiscal year last year, and I'll continue to do this year, is we track the amount of money that we have paid against the assessments. Pretty simple graph now. Says we're only tracking 3 months. Although we don't start at the beginning of the fiscal year, we actually start in March when we start getting monies in for the upcoming fiscal year. The numbers speak for themselves, and it's really interesting that hopefully they'll trend up. One of the things that we don't have yet, and I will say it's very difficult to get with all the labor-intensive work that needed to be done, but we wanted to come up with, of the $9.3 million that was in assessment dollars that were owed for last year, how much did we get? We were up to 96.2%, I believe, at the end of March. So one of the ones I'd like to do when we get a chance, it's not super critical, but it'd just be interesting to see how much of that, in the COVID year, how much of that we had actually collected. And then, of course, obviously what we don't collect rolls into the delinquent accounts going into next year. Next graph. This was interesting. I just did this sort of out of curiosity. The two left graphs are, the blue one on the left is the assessment from last year, and the green is what we had collected through through May. All right. So if you look on the right two bars, you have our new assessment value for this fiscal year and what we've now collected through March. What's interesting is back in May of 2020, we had collected 68.5% of the monies owed against our assessment. This year, at the same time, we've collected 88.9% of the monies owed for assessment. So I just thought it was an interesting
seems
story.
incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
That's an incredible number, because as people are being laid off and jobs are being lost, I guess this is the resurgence.
Well, and the other thing that affected the numbers from previous years, if you recall, we pushed back the due date
Right.
for the assessments for 3 months. So, again, but I just think that rolling that back in, it shows an interesting picture that, maybe would support the fact that things are coming back and we're probably back on the track of, collecting the assessment dollars as we have in the past. So, next slide. So you'll look at this one. There's one thing that changed from the previous year. In last month, we reported the fact that we were targeting the balance at the end of the fiscal year, April 30th, of 6.0 million, but we're now at 5.6 million, and there's a reason for that. We had some approved expenses that had happened in the March and April timeframe, so we're not that far off. But again, we track everything as we have for the rest of the fiscal year. And I think that's pretty good for the target that we had. Interestingly enough, if you look at the balance we had, in our accounts from last year and the balance that we had, going into this current fiscal year, they're exactly the same. I don't know if that's relevant or not, but I find it interesting. So next item. And this is the last item. So one of the things you'll notice is if you look at all those, and again, we've been doing this month to month to month, we've been taking care of all the expenses against our reserve accounts. If you notice all the way through up until that last item, that playground equipment other for $253,000, that was one of the contributing factors to push us from the 6.0 down to the 5.653 that you see right there. So it's been tracked. Again, there's no surprises there. All the monies, all the expenses against the reserves have been tracked well. We've, as a board, have approved those. And, again, we'll start again with the 5.6 million and consider managing our reserves going into the next fiscal year as we move forward. So, any question? That's it for me.
Thanks, Doug. All right, I'm going to open the floor for public comments. I'm going to remind everyone that you have 5 minutes, and give me your name and your address, please. Any public comments?
Evening, my name is Bill Hayes. I live at 39 White Horse,
Speaking to the mic.
and I'm going to bring up a topic I brought up earlier this week at the town hall. I still wanted to make sure that my side of the story was kind of told on the short-term rental, because I know we're calling it. I have 7 people who are going to decide 8 what it feels like to be a short-term rental owner. I got to tell you, I sit on both sides of the road. An 86-year-old mother-in-law that lives next to a 6-bedroom short-term rental. Been in the community since 1980. I've seen everything that can happen in this community. We are all different. One person, border lynx, teal, wood duck, section 1, section 10. This is going to affect those sections 1995 and older. Basically 95 and forward have already been decided. I'm going to make 2 points. Short-term rental is in this community right now is feeling targeted. Just kind of like a red Corvette driving down the road. We're the same thing. We feel like we are being picked out of the crowd because the other 93% of Ocean Pines is not feeling this vote at all. Maybe you can say the person next to a short-term rental is feeling this vote. My mother-in-law is feeling this vote because she's got a 6-bedroom with parking for 2. I'm here tonight to say that quit picking on the short-term rentals until you can tell everybody in the community what the rules are.
town hall, I learned that parking in Ocean Pines means two wheels in the grass on the street. My DR said, no street parking. But the president of the board said, two wheels, that's the standard. I didn't know that. That's a rule I didn't know. My point is, we haven't assembled the group. We have gotten smarter. I mean, I'm telling you right now, Frank Bailey is the smartest guy in the world right now when it comes to these short-term rentals, without question. But some people are catching up, namely me. I read what the county says we can't do. We can't even use the word nuisance in the same manner that the county uses the word nuisance. Nuisance means tall grass, and cars parked around, and boats parked around. In Ocean Pines, nuisance means somebody's doing something I don't like. So before we go to this vote tonight, tell the people what the rules are. This is my ideal group. I'm going to tell you what my ideal group is to determine what the rules in this community are. I think Patty, or I'm going to say Stacy Ennis at Worcester County Rental should be part of the group. I think that Sharon O'Hare, representing the real estate, should be in this group. I think Larry Malone from ARC should be in this group. I think Dino McCurdy from CPI, and I know he's retired, but he should be in this group because why? He's smart. I think Leo the Chief. I think Dave Van Gaspar. I think Patty Stevens from Park and Rec just got elected in or pushed into, former short-term rental. I'm trying to stack it for the people that are feeling the pain. We felt the Worcester County pain 2 years ago. Worcester County said, we're going to make money on you guys. Your house can no longer rent to 7 people. It can only rent to 5. You can change it to a long-term rental and rent it to 15. But right now, you can only rent it to 5. I'm saying we're not ready for that vote yet. If we publish the rules, and we hold everyone accountable, then everyone becomes part of the team. Don't be that red Corvette that's getting picked on. Put the speed limit out there at 55. All cars drive at 55, not just red Corvettes. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the floor to public comments. We have some capital purchase requests. The first one, John, you want to go through it?
Sure. Hold on. Okay, so just before, let me just recap and just give a highlight on everything here. So in prior updates, I had mentioned that we eliminated 7 trucks from the fleet. We brought them to auction. We recognized somewhere around $55,000 in gain. We're not going to, and I'm not here tonight to exchange them. I am going to, and what I'll list is the ones that we had in the budget, and that's what I'm coming forward with. So just the 7, just to highlight, the 7 that we're not going to fill, I am going to request to fill or to replace 6 vehicles, which I'll talk about next. So the 7, we recognized again around $53,000, $55,000, and the annual run rate savings on that is somewhere between, they've estimated between $50,000 and $75,000. So that's separate, okay? So with that, I'd like to talk about, as Larry just asked, the 6 vehicles that we are coming forward to, which are in the budget, which were approved, that we're asking for replacement, as well as the Ventrac MA900 boom mower, which is also in the budget. Okay, so the first one, there's a lot here. So the worst one, let's just start with the Ventrac first. So Public Works, capital purchase request. Ventrac MA900 boom mower, requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation of $37,016.90 for Iron Source. Now, with that, just one highlight with that, this machine and with this boom and the attachments, this will help them to perform their maintenance better with the trees and bushes and hedges and all that. Like I mentioned, we have less labor, and as you know, for this budget for 2022, I believe we didn't eliminate the positions, but we did not fill for the budget 5 positions. So, and this was approved in the budget.
I have a motion to,
Can I ask a question? Oh, we gotta do a motion
do a
first.
motion first. I have a motion to authorize the $37,016.90 for the Iron Source vent track.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Tom?
I noticed that that the old boom mower was sold in October of 2019. So it's been gone for almost 2 years. Is there a reason that we need it now and haven't needed it for the last year and a half?
So, like I said, there is work that we haven't done. The other thing is we did try over the last couple of years not to put in, right? The last time we did a replacement on a car or a truck or whatever was, I believe, 2018. So they have been holding back. And last year, you know, with cash and all that, we were trying to watch. So they also need this for the ditches. So this is to help with the labor.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, thank you. All right, now, all right, so then the trucks, right, the 6 trucks, and all these trucks are fully depreciated. And again, just, you know, the same thing what I said, with that we did not come forward the last several years. I asked Eddie and everything, and you know that, and even from BNF, if we could just hold on with the fleet, especially with cash and all that. Okay, so next one, Public Works. Well, actually, this one, 2021 Ford Explorer, 4-wheel drive, requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation of $35,441.46 for Hertrick Fleet Services. These are all fleet services. The prices, there is a schedule in there where we put together to show you what was in the budget and what finally came out. And I believe there's like a variability to budget around, I don't know, 15,000.
I have a motion to approve the authorize a spend of $35,441.46 for
So
the
moved.
2021 Ford Explorer. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in
I have a
favor?
question.
Oh, go ahead.
So it's replacing a truck, a pickup truck. This Ford Explorer?
Hold on, let me check, because there is
Yeah,
a
it
lot of
says
them.
it's replacing a F-150 pickup truck. It seems confusing to me that there's a Public Works need for an Explorer, a 4-door, travel around town, looking at stuff Explorer. And I'm just asking, because it's replacing a F-150 pickup truck that you can use for maintenance. I'm just wondering why we decided to replace a pickup truck with a Ford Explorer.
Yeah, so remember, we eliminated seven trucks, and I anticipated this happening. They're good questions, Tom, and everything, but with the eliminations of the trucks and everything that what we did, this one actually is the one that the GM's going to use, but we shifted the Ford Explorer that I'm using now to Debbie for her. There was kind of a shift with those cars and the blue car that was out there with Linda. So with all the cars and everything, they were just trying to show it for the budget and everything, but specifically that's not replacing. It's probably replacing one of the earlier Ford Explorer that Debbie had that we put to auction back in a couple of months ago.
So should this be under admin instead of Public
Yeah,
Works?
it should be under admin, correct?
I think so too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Okay, I'm just trying.
Yeah, no, that's,
Caught me by surprise.
yeah, no, I understand. I said it was a good question.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Can we,
Aye.
I'm sorry, can we accept the friendly amendment that Tom has just offered of having this under admin as opposed to where it is right now, if we're voting on this motion?
It was just a type, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's just a classification.
Okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
as long as we're clear.
It's a budget classification, that's all.
Okay.
so Michelle was just telling me, I think the reason this came up under Public Works is because Public Works submitted everything. They do all this. And so it was just a
Need
typo
to
or
make- You just need
whatever.
to make sure
Okay.
it's under your budget.
Oh, it's definitely.
Yeah, when
Yeah,
it goes
yeah,
in the
yeah.
asset list. it
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened
Right.
because Public Works sent in all the analysis and all that. Yep,
All
we
in
can correct it.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, John, the
Next.
next Ford Transit, 21 Ford Transit.
Ford Transit, Public Works, 2021 Ford Transit T350, requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation of $51,396.59 for Hertrick Fleet Services.
Can I have a motion to approve the spend on the 2021 Ford Transit for $51,396.59?
I'm sorry, what is the Ford Transit used for?
Can you wait for discussion, Cammie?
Most certainly.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Cammie, discussion?
Could I ask what this particular automobile is going to be used for?
So with all respect, and I will answer, obviously for Public Works specifically, and I brought this up before, I mean, these are questions, fine. I thought that's why we put this out and I get it out a week before. So if anybody does have these questions down to that level, I can get that. This is for Public Works. This is for doing it specifically, whether they're using this for gravel or landscaping or whatever, which is all part of it. But yeah.
Well, this is a.
This is Ed's? Yeah, so this one, okay, this one's Ed for the electrician. We have it broken out on that schedule.
Like the carpenters.
So
It's
we
a
we tried
maintenance
to
truck.
break that out. So if you look at the schedule and the backup, we replaced the electrician. If you look in the second column on this schedule, because I did anticipate this and I knew I was going to get hit, we tried to break out what they're for.
Thank you, John.
Yep, no, you're welcome. Good questions.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. John, the next one is the 2022 Ford
So
F-250.
the 2022 Ford F-250 crew cab, four-wheel drive, requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation, $36,551.29. Hertrick Fleet Services. So if you look on the other schedule, this has been a while since I've looked at these. That one is used for drainage, I believe, the drainage team.
Is there a motion to approve the spend for the 2022 Ford F-250 for $36,551.29?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, John, the next one is the 2022 Ford
So
F-550.
the 2022 Ford F-550 dump truck, requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation of $57,301.85 for Hertrick Fleet Services. Again, these are all in the budget, they were all approved. And that one was, if I can just, Ford F-50, again, drainage. All those trucks were they were all depreciated fully and had some wear on them.
So John, we have two of these that you're requesting, so can I have a motion to approve the spend for two 2022 Ford 550s, both at the cost of $57,301.85?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And I just want to point out in that schedule that where it tells you, which area of Public Works and everything, there is estimates on there for auction for the offset to what we're paying for these, which were under budget of around another 55, 60,000 that we believe we'll get for the trucks that we have.
And then the last one, John, is 2022 Ford F-250.
Yeah, so the 2022 Ford F-250 crew cab, four-wheel drive truck, requesting authorization to go forward with staff recommendation, $36,551.29 from Hert Fleet Services.
Is there a motion to approve the spend for the 2022 Ford F-250 for $36,551.29?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. There are no CPI violations to discuss this evening?
No.
Okay, so we have Doug, a motion.
Yeah, move that the Board of Directors approves the recommended amended and restated bylaws as drafted to reflect the approved amendment to Article 5, Section 5.13D1 of the bylaws. Purpose and effect, this action will comply with the requirements to amend the bylaws based on the results of the referendum on the issue. The background of referendum was sent to solicit consideration for a proposed change to the bylaws regarding a limit on spending by the board. Based on the results of the referendum, the membership voted to approve the change board's spending authority on certain expenses. The motion is to approve and officially accept the updated language in the noted section of the bylaws.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
So, what we're doing here, just to clarify for the general public, is that we're not questioning the referendum. The referendum is not an issue that we can deal with. What we're doing here is documenting and memorializing the fact that we accepted the restated bylaws that were submitted to us by council based on the requirements from the referendum. It serves that purpose, and it serves what I consider a fairly important purpose, is to document the fact. Go back to, we were doing some research back to 2008 when the bylaws were changed back then, and there was no documentation either in the meeting minutes or anywhere else where they could say that they actually made that change. There was an entry in the meeting minutes back in 2008 where they said that they would go for the referendum, but this change was never really documented. Now, is it absolutely required? No, we would not be violating any process, any due process, any laws by not doing this, but I felt that it would be important, just as an administrative correct procedure, to go ahead and document the fact that we did this. We recognize the fact that the information we got from council was in line with what the referendum demanded. And one other thing too is that I actually sat in and watched the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee meeting, and Jim Trummel, who has a very long history with Ocean Pines, said the same thing occurred back in 1991, where they just don't have the general records of the information being updated as required by a referendum back then. So it's nothing more than to just, document the fact and memorialize the fact that we accepted the language as required by the referendum from our council and is filing it in the depository for the HOA.
Larry?
Cammy?
As the Board Advisory Committee member to the Bylaws Committee, I asked this question, and I think, Doug, you might have heard it very succinctly when we got into the very first part of that meeting. And I said, we need to know this and tell us what happened in the revision to the 2008 bylaws. And it is my understanding from our meeting regarding this that there is not that this motion does not compel us to accept the referendum. What we are doing here, because that was the vote of the community. So we're
Right.
not voting to accept the referendum. What we are voting for here, by voting for this motion, is we are voting for the language which has been put forth by our attorney. Go ahead. No, the language which has been put forth by our attorney to memorialize what we're going to do to appear in the historic records in Snow Hill. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So the thing, just to make it very clear, we were presented, council presented two options for us. One would be to have an addendum, with just the language change, okay, as one option. The second option would be to have the bylaws restated. And his preference and his recommendation was to have the bylaws restated because it's only one document, because that's the document that needs to be filed in the repository with the county for the HOA. So it's not only are we doing a language, more importantly, we're accepting the format that he has suggested, and that was to put it as restated bylaws rather than an amendment to the existing bylaws.
But I think the question that has been raised is we are not saying to the community, yes, we accept your opinion, because that's not ours to accept.
That is correct.
It's not ours to accept or reject. It is ours to make finite the language that is consistent with what the community has voted on.
Correct.
Other discussion? Frank?
So help me understand something here, because when this discussion came up, I asked about how did we memorialize what happened with the 2008 bylaw changes. So, and the answer was there was not very much on it. We didn't know. So this is how I see the situation. We were presented with a petition. We fought a court case we lost a court case. The court instructed us to conduct the referendum vote with some specific language in it, and we did that. Where will that be memorialized so that people 20 years from now knows what exactly happened? Because this, I realize there's a document that we have to go down to Snow Hill, but this doesn't memorialize the path that got us to that bylaw change. And I think we need to memorialize the path that got us to the bylaw change very clearly.
Other discussion?
Larry, Frank, I see your point, and with all due respect to that, I think that what we're trying to do is to ensure that people who come behind us are able to see what the path was, and I think that's what you're saying. But on advice of counsel, what we're doing here, and Michelle has been helpful in helping us dissect through all of this, that while there was not, let me back up. In 2008, there was an additional printed piece on the bylaws that these are the bylaws of 2008. And that was about it. That was about it of what we said when the bylaws were reviewed. And what we're trying to do is create a track so that this particular bylaw or this particular portion of the bylaws will show an update of 2021 when it was actually done. And it's my understanding that Michelle keeps a record of when all of this stuff was done. So Michelle's record will allow us to look back, or allow future boards to look back to see when this was actually memorialized and filed in Snow Hill. Does that help?
Well, I understand that. I mean, I understand that there's a legal document that we have to file in a repository down Snow Hill. But my question is, where do we capture how we got to that point of memorializing that document? Because if this goes in a record and somebody looks at it 15 years from now, we don't know that we had a petition. We don't know that we had conducted a referendum. We don't know what the vote was. And we really don't even know the specific wording that changed that was requested. And that's what I think we have to memorialize from a historical standpoint, in addition to what we have to do down at Snow Hill.
Colette?
I thought you announced that in President's remarks.
I
When it
did.
happened, so it's in the minutes.
It is in the minutes, and it's also in the records of the election committee. So this information has been
Yeah.
recorded. Any
I
other
agree.
comments? No, I have some comments. This, in my mind, is process gone amok. We went through this process on this referendum, and the community told us that they told us what they wanted. Those results have been announced. The reason that you don't see any motion in 2008 or 1991 is because it's not required. This is a redundant motion, and quite honestly, as a homeowner, I'm offended that this board, that this motion would be presented, that we are now looking to accept the wording or results of the referendum. Council has not advised us that this should be done. I spoke to council today. Council also believes that this is redundant and unnecessary. The results of the referendum were announced in the president's message, and announced in the paper. The process that we went through is well documented in our minutes from the time that we rejected the petition. The board voted to defend the lawsuit, and we were involved in negotiations, which were all documented. So the record of what went on here is in place. This, again, motion, in my mind, is redundant, unnecessary. And again, as in my own position as a homeowner, I find it insulting that this board would consider this motion when the community on a 2-to-1 basis told us to change the document. The document wording has been changed. Council, it is a mechanical operation at this point that does not need approval of this board, and it should be, we should have gotten this filed with the HOA repository before now. And the only thing that's holding it up is the fact that this motion is pending. So I can tell you that I am not going to vote for this motion because I think it's unnecessary and redundant. Any further discussion? Doug?
So I'll agree with you on one point and disagree with you on another. I'll agree with you on the fact that it may be somewhat redundant because there are points in our corporate vital records that we could potentially reference should this issue come up somewhere in the future. All right. I will disagree with you on the fact that someone would be offended because clearly you didn't understand the intent of the motion. Let me say it one more time. The intent of the motion is not to accept or ratify or authorize the results of the referendum. The intent of the motion is to document the language and the format that council presented us so that we can have it in meeting minutes and corporate vital records for future reference. That's it.
Well, I will disagree with you. I am offended by this motion. You may think that, that's my opinion. I am offended. So with no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye, I'm opposed. Motion failed. All right, Frank, you have a second reading of repeal of resolution B08.
Yeah. The topic is repeal of resolution B08. This is the second reading. The purpose of the second reading is to repeal a resolution B08 in its entirety.
Is there a motion?
I move that we accept second reading.
You want to read it again, Frank, for the record? Or is there a second? I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
Frank, you want to read
The purpose of the second reading is to repeal resolution B08 in its entirety.
any discussion? All in favor of the motion to repeal B08, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now we have a motion, Frank.
This motion is short-term rental guidelines. The motion, to undertake any and all actions necessary to incorporate the Worcester County Codes for Short-Term Rentals, ZS 1-351, litter, PH 1-106, and noise, ZS 1:Roman numeral 3-46, into the declarations of restrictions in all sections of Ocean Pines. For repeat violations of these codes, to suspend a member's ability to engage in short-term rentals of their dwelling for periods up to 60 days. To establish a formal method to advise Worcester County of unlicensed rental properties. To require that occupancy limits, noise, trash, and parking restrictions stated in our Declaration of Restrictions and County Code be posted in a conspicuous area of short-term rental properties, and to levy fines for violations. The purpose and effect, to effectively regulate short-term rentals and implement additional objective restrictions for the mutual comfort of all members. And in the background, in 2019, the board began a process to develop an effective process to regulate short-term rentals as a result of specific problems encountered in a small number of properties. This process was suspended in the spring of 2020 to determine if county-passed legislation would have effectively regulate these types of rentals and provide an effective means of dealing with problems. Experience in the summer of 2020 proved that this was not the case, and OP efforts resumed. After meeting with the fire marshal, the fire chief, the police chiefs, county officials, and attorneys from Williams, Moore, Shockley, and Harrison, it has been determined that the best course of action is to incorporate the Worcester County Code for short-term rentals, litter, and noise into the declaration of restrictions for each section of Ocean Pines. This approach will be no more restrictive on owner property rights than existing law, but will give Ocean Pines the power to enforce and fine property owners in violation of these codes.
Discussion?
I do have one thing.
Has it been
I
seconded?
thought we seconded it already.
Second.
Discussion?
Okay.
I have,
Colette?
no, Frank.
No, just one thing. I mean, we've worked with stakeholders and to Bill's comment earlier, and I want to make this clear. We are elected to make decisions on behalf of the homeowners. And I accept that responsibility as all of you have. But there is a narrow set of circumstances that comes up occasionally before boards where the decision that they're going to make has the ability to affect every homeowner in Ocean Pines. I'm not sitting here asking 7 people to decide the fate of short-term rentals. What I want is 8,452 lot owners, each one which could be affected by a short-term rental, to have a voice in saying whether those rentals should be regulated. This is not a 7-person vote. This is a vote that will pass or fail by each section in this community when asked to all 8,452 lot owners.
Larry.
Colette?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank Frank for doggedly pursuing a solution to this problem and for soliciting input from anybody and their brother who wanted to give him input. It's been a long road to get here, and I appreciate the work and the intelligence that you applied to this. That said, one of the things that we learned in this process is that there are people in the community who would like the enforcement to apply across the board, not just to short-term rentals, but to long-term rentals and to properties that are not rented. The problems that we see with the short-term rentals have certainly been highlighted, but we have also heard from a number of homeowners who have inflicted these kinds of difficulties on their neighbors. So I support this motion, but I am intending to present a motion next month to add on to this initiative language to apply enforcement of the litter, noise, and other provisions of our DRs, that the enforcement include those as well, with fining authority to be applied.
Tammy?
Thanks, Larry. Yes, Colette, I will definitely support that. Bill, thank you for being here again tonight. You have a very dogged approach to us, which I admire and think you are just exemplary of the kind of community person we want to have here. Your presentation is just wonderful. What I see this as is as we have built the template for where we want to go, but with Colette's vision for where this goes in the future. So we do the short-term rentals, and just as you have said, you want to spread this out to all the community because you don't want, and I don't want, short-term rentals to feel like they're being hit on. I want this to be expanded through the entire committee, and I think this provides us with a good base. So if we do vote to pass this motion tonight, I want you personally to know from me that I don't see this as the end of only being short-term rentals. I see that the model that we're developing here would be expanded through the community.
Other discussion? Tom?
I obviously have issues with it. I've talked to Frank about it many times. It's just, I agree with Bill in the situation that you really should put together a group and put the rules out there, because there are no rules in this. There's no guideline as to what it's going to cost, who's going to pay whom, and worst of all, who are we going to hire to do this, and who's going to pay them? How many CPI inspectors are we going to have to hire to do weekend work, to do 24-hour surveillance, to go and answer all these phone calls? We have no idea. And now to add this to add this restriction state, to add this to require occupancy limits, noise, and parking restrictions stated to our declaration be posted in a conspicuous area of short-term rental properties. Is that a 8x8 sign in somebody's yard saying, please don't park on my grass? Is it, a dump truck sitting there with a big thing saying, I'm not a short-term rental, don't put your vehicle in here? It's just too wide open for me. And frankly, and I said it before, it's exactly the same thing the county has. And I know that you all have talked to Joe Moore, and you've talked to the guys who've all the good old boys who put this thing together, and they say they're not willing to enforce anything. Of course they're not. This is a 2-year-old rental thing that they put together 2 years ago. They never even got questioned on it a year ago, and now they're getting questioned on it. My opinion, again, is it's going to come down the road, and they're going to have to start enforcing it. And I don't think that we need to start getting involved in enforcing these regulations. And A, and B, I don't think we'll be able to afford it in employment and all the fees we're going to have to pay attorneys. We pay attorneys fees enough now. I mean, every 5 minutes somebody's calling an attorney, and we have attorneys fees going out the wazoo. I don't want to add to it by putting together short-term rental guidelines. And I also agree with Bill in the situation that I have a house behind me, and the people come down once a month. They stay for a week, and 2 days ago, they were out on their back deck talking until 5:30 in the morning. They own the house. They live in Pennsylvania. They only come down 2 times a month in the summer, but when they do, they're out there talking till 5:30 in the morning every time. And it's not a short-term rental. It's a homeowner's property. They just don't come down that often. So it's a bigger, broader issue. And I just think it needs to be more specific. And I know, and believe me, I'm not saying Frank hasn't done due diligence on this. He's been all over this and talked to a lot of people. I just think there's just too many holes in it, and I won't vote for it, unfortunately. Thank you.
Doug, go ahead.
So first of all, Frank, I do want to thank you for all the work. I know how much work is going into this. Isn't some kind of fly-by-night, cocktail napkin approach to things. I agree 100% in concept. Where I'm having a little bit of trouble is, when you to basically take the wording, undertake any and all actions necessary to incorporate the Worcester County codes for short-term rentals, into the declarations of restrictions. Okay, that in and of itself is fine. I think that's tangible. It's easy to do. We can identify it and get it done. The question is, when you use the term short-term rentals, does that mean, and I'll just play devil's advocate here, that these 3 ordinances that are in the county code don't have to be adhered to by long-term rentals and property owners? Because that's where I draw a line. I'm kind of taking on what all along what you were saying, Colette. We can't stop at short-term rentals. Okay, but the issue is
Right.
noise, litter, parking. Okay, we need to address all those. But here, for repeat violations of these codes, suspended members, I don't see the process. In other words, it's a little nebulous here. What I would see is maybe having them to undertake, I see this as a 2-part process, to undertake this, and then we have to define exactly what it is that we're going to do. And I don't see any definition of exactly what it is that we're going to do. With regard, it started here for repeat violations, suspended members' ability. Maybe that's part of the process. Maybe that's part of the actions we're going to take. But I want to see something more concrete with regard to exact process that will be followed. How's the enforcement going to work? How's the reporting going to work? How's the follow-up going to work? And what's it going to cost us? So I agree with you. I'm not shooting it down. I'm saying we got more work to do. Again, I see this. If we pass this tonight, I'm going to have a tough time with the term short-term rentals, okay? Because again, it looks like it's targeting, and I want to stay as far away from targeting a specific group of people that anyone would. I want to be able to make sure that, hey, who's to say that there isn't a house in Ocean Pines that's a long-term rental that has 14 people living in it with 7 cars in the driveway? Have we ever had a report of that? So again, I just want to make sure we're consistent, and if we're going to do the DRs, let's do it consistent across all of them. I'd like to see a process, okay? And if you can help me out here. If you agree that this is a 2-step process, one, to agree that we have to take some action and it's going to require some follow-up, and then the second is that we will approve a set of processes, procedures, finding authority, and the likes to go along with it. Because if not, then I can't support it because it's just not complete enough for me.
Let me kind of respond. Well, first, let me respond to Bill, because there's something. Bill, we hear you, and we talked about expanding this to other things rather than short-term rentals at tonight's meeting. And my position to Colette, which she agreed with, I think we need two separate things, because again, we're talking about something now that really will affect all 8,452 homeowners, and they have two choices. There's short-term rentals, and do you want to expand this also to consider other things? Because what we're talking about, and let's be perfectly clear with what Colette's approach is for the next meeting. We're talking about noise, we're talking about litter, okay, that will be expanded, the county code will expand to every property in Ocean Pines, irrespective, long-term, short-term owned. And that will affect all property owners. To your point, Doug, we asked a couple years ago and started down the path when we revised our DR process, does the community or will the community accept fines? There was a lot of pushback. There's pushback for a real good reason. They simply don't trust us. We can't eliminate, no matter how good those financials look, no matter how good we've done over the past 3 years, we can't eliminate 50 years of mistrust. And I'm not going to try to do it. And if I tried to convince somebody that I could do it, I'd be lying to them. Okay? We got to take this apple one little bite at a time to convince the community that they can give this board, the next board, this GM, and the next GM some power, and it won't go to their head, and they won't do something crazy and stupid. And that's something, trust is earned. It's not given. And we simply have to earn trust by walking our way through the process. Second of all, when you talk about enforcement, we need two things to get to enforcement. Number one, you have to pass the regulations. Once you then get to the enforcement, and I'll specifically say, council explicitly asked us to put in repeat violation for these codes, because if we don't put in that we can suspend rentals for 60 days for repeat violations, we will not be able to do that if it passes. That has to be incorporated in there. The second part, when you talk about things like fines, okay? Fines are really, at the end of the day, we could say that, oh, if you do something that we don't like, we're going to fine you $5,000. The reality of the situation is the court would look at us and say, hell no, get out of here and take whatever your rules are with you. There's a very tight system of fines that homeowners associations can put on homeowners in the state of Maryland, governed by case law. Number one, almost everybody says you start with a warning. Number two, your first fine is going to be less than your second fine. And your third fine is going to be more than your second. And if you go to the next violation, there will be more. But even there, it has a cap on it. So we can't get to the fines until we get to the legislation that says we have the ability to fine. Then when we define the fines, and that will be just like we do each year for interest rates, okay? This would be the fine. Now, at some point in time, the board may not have a fine for a year, or they may not the same fines ride for 5 years. Some future boards may do that. The reason we didn't want to hard code that into the DRs is the DRs, some of the DRs that we're looking at, one of them was dated 1971. I'm sure that whatever fine would have been put in 1971 would be comparatively very small today. So that's something that has to be maintained. And for your thing, Tom, as far as the enforcement, there's no intent here to go out and hire 500 people, nor do I think there's any reason to do so. We've talked with the community, and I think that the community, and not only the homeowners in the community, but I think all the stakeholders that we've talked to have cautioned that the East Shore mentality and the Ocean Pines mentality is that they are comfortable with a complaint-driven system. They don't want a proactive, aggressive homeowners association walking around house by house looking for violations and fining for them. But the people have also made it clear when we bring a complaint to you, we don't want you to walk away from it. You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Up here, you sit in this chair, you have three choices when somebody brings a complaint to you. You address it, you ignore it, or you kick the can down the road. We're addressing complaints that have been brought to us. We didn't wake up 2 years ago when you were president and say, damn, we don't have anything to do, so let's go attack short-term rentals. We addressed short-term rentals because people came to us and they said, we have a problem and the county can't solve it. And the county has not done one damn thing different over the last 2 years.
I agree with you.
And they won't do one thing different over the next 2 years if you listen to the stakeholders, including county employees. They don't have the budget to get the resources, and they don't have the resources to allocate for enforcement. So it comes down to our homeowners coming up to us and saying, are you going to do something or are you going to walk away? And that's our choice. And based on good community input from guys like Bill, who's saying, wait a minute, you're targeting. By the way, side issue. The first step of this process was the attorneys conducted a review to make sure that we weren't really targeting under the federal Fair Housing Acts. But there's issues that are community-wide that this specific thing doesn't address. That's why we want to pair it with the other one and give people in the community the opportunity to say what they want us to do. Instead of 7 people, Bill, telling the community what's good for them, we want, in this case, the community to tell us what they want us to do.
My last page in that thing, if I'm allowed, showed rules from Ocean City, rules from Rehoboth, rules from Bethany, and a complaint page on a website for Salisbury, and we don't have any of that.
But we can do that. Once this passes, we can do it.
Are there any further discussions?
Yeah, I just
Go on.
wanted to underscore what Frank is saying to address Doug's concern about process. The DRs don't speak to process, they speak to rules. And so if the community tells us they want this, the community tells us they want something that applies across the board, some regulations that apply across the board, the next step is to develop that process. And so it is a 3 or 4 step process, actually. The process for the short-term rentals, it's not going to be the same as for the long-term rentals. Neither of those are going to be the same as for the homeowner complaints. So I think there is a lot of work yet to do, but the first step is to, take the first step, put this to the community to vote on and tell us what they want us to do as a next step.
Tammy?
In the alternative, and Colette, I appreciate that comment. In the alternative, Frank, and it's okay to say no, but would you consider tabling this motion until we have time to further address this in a way that it is more inclusive of other parts of the community?
No, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because it's just like when we started off a year ago, Cammie, I gave the board a choice, and I ended up voting against the motion I put. Do you want to eliminate short-term rentals, or do you want to go down the path of regulating? Okay? People may want to regulate short-term rentals within the section that they live and may not want regulations on long-term rentals or homeowners. I can't control that. That's their decision to make as a homeowner, the way they want their community to be run. If we put both of them together, we're asking people, again, for the overreaching omnibus solution. This category, this category, this category. And I'm not sure that homeowners want all 3 of those categories regulated. They may very well. They're going to get a choice to vote on all 3 of them. But they're going to get a choice to vote it in 2 separate packages that will go out probably in the same mailings together at no extra cost. And again, I think this is one case where the best advice I think maybe the best advice that I've gotten by working with people like Bill is that this time, instead of us telling the people what's good for them, let the people tell us what they want us to do.
Okay.
Doug?
So if we, and I guess this is for everybody, if we pass this tonight, what do we see as the next action item that comes out of this?
The next action item, Doug, would be, kind of explain the process a little bit, okay? This is different than a referendum in that everybody that's eligible to vote.
Yeah.
Okay, you know that,
Yeah.
right? Okay, we've formalized this specific wording, not deviating from this, but might be a little different in terms of how the attorney puts it down with these concepts in it.
And I got, if I could.
So, okay, I'm gonna make sure I understand it, Frank. So let's say we move forward with this. Again, I would see this spawning a next step.
Yeah, the question,
the
the
next-
question develops and it goes out and we establish the timeline, like there has to be a mailing to everybody. And then we've conducted these before. I think the last time was for the sports score pool, to be honest. It's brought in and by section, the
Yeah.
vote is counted.
And I guess, wouldn't it behoove us to put some more information out to the homeowner so that they know what they're getting ready to vote on?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I see, that's where
Yeah.
I'm drawing.
But the
I
very next
realize
step
that
was-
The next step would be, we're not sending out a mailing saying we're
No,
gonna do
no, no,
stuff
no.
about short-term rentals, please vote for the,
No.
in your DRs. It's gonna end up being redundant. We're
I
gonna do it 2 or 3
completely agree.
times. So I
I
wanna,
completely agree.
what's the next step before we do that mailing? I mean, if I'm a homeowner and I get this that says we're gonna start regulating short-term rentals, okay,
I would say,
how?
I would
Okay, you're getting
say-
ready to have me
Yeah.
vote on something in my section. I don't know what I'm voting on.
Okay. Kind of just conceptual timeline in working with our budgeted mailings that we have already planned, okay? We put out information that this question's coming out to you. Okay? And if it passes, here's what it means. Okay? And we put out to them that how many people has to vote, that this question may appear in multiple mailings to them. Okay? So we explain the process to them. We explain the question to them, explain the ramifications of what will happen if the regulations pass, and explain what we'd also have to do with the legitimate questions, like, for example, that Tom has brought up and that Bill has brought up. Okay, and you have brought up, what is going to be the process if this passes? What are we going to have to do to implement it, and how will it be implemented? And for that, we have other guideposts. And one of the nice things about using the county guidelines is, like, somewhere in here I have the county short-term rental application. So we can show people the kind of information that's in there. Okay, people may ask us, if I had to bet, I think it's certain. The county code is not easy to follow. So we will probably get questions about the county code, which we will have to answer to do that. But I see that information as a process. Why are we doing this? Okay, what happens? What does your vote mean, yes or no? If you vote yes, what it means. If you vote no, what it potentially means. And then how will we?
Yeah, again, that's the kind of information I want to see. That's the kind of information I think we're responsible to send to the homeowners. If you vote this way, here is what we're proposing.
Right.
Okay, the fine, the process will be this, the fine will be this, yada, 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 apply. And,
Couldn't
if we
agree more.
if we don't give them that information, quite frankly, we may end up with homeowners going, well, I don't know enough, so I'm voting no.
Absolutely. And by the way,
Yeah, and I think
there's
that-
a lot of work to
Yeah, I think,
execute this.
I think from getting from this to the next step, there is a lot of work to take place. And you're absolutely right. We have to tell the community exactly what this is and what the consequences are going to be and what the process is going to be. But that's the next step. The first step is to authorize doing the change in the DRs. That's the first step. And then we're going to have to put a group together to go ahead with Frank and come up with that process. I agree with you. The community, this is not going to happen next month. This is going to be several months down the road until we can go through all this and get the communications out. We had one town hall meeting the other day. There's another one in the future on this one to actually explain that, exactly where we're going. I think Tom's next.
Well, and to play devil's advocate, the board's going to change in 2 months. and we're gonna have to deal with this and figure out, and then you're gonna have different ideas that are gonna come up as to how we're gonna regulate short-term rentals. My issue is still cost. You say that it's gonna be a complaint-driven system by neighbors against neighbors and people in the community that are gonna file complaints. Somebody still has to process all those complaints. I mean, it still has to be done. Right now, we're processing those complaints. They come to us, and we either call the police department and have them go out, or we talk to each other and say, what are we gonna do? Or we call John and say, John, can you take care of this? Can you look at the tents or whatever the hell it may be? We process it. I mean, I just need more specifics on it. I just don't, it's just too broad-based for me. And I know you're saying it's a starting point, but I don't know what's the cost of the license gonna be? We're gonna do an Ocean Pines license, rental license too? Nobody knows what that's gonna be. I mean, it's just so wide open, and I know it's a starting point, but there's not even an outline as to which direction we're gonna go. I know what Larry just said, that we're gonna start here, and then we're gonna go to the next step of developing the process. I mean, what happens if the process we develop isn't something that the next board or the board following in a year even wants to adhere to or wants to go through with? I don't know. There's just too many questions for me, and again, I know you say you're adamant about the fact that the county won't do anything after 2 years, but I still think that there's strength in numbers, and I know you've talked to more people than I have, but I still believe that if they put the regulations together and if we're basically just sticking them in our DRs to follow suit with them, there should be a way to get them to start being responsible for them. So, I mean, that's just where I stand. And I know it's different with you, and I appreciate your opinion. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just telling you what I think.
What?
This reminds me of the process we went through when we were making a decision about the clubhouse. When I came on the board, the discussion was to renovate the upstairs. And that was a board that preceded me that started that discussion. And then Doug and I came on the board, we joined that discussion. And in the process of being in that discussion, we got a little bit of more information. We decided, wait a minute, rebuilding is probably gonna be the better way to go. The board made a decision to go in the direction of rebuilding without details, without a plan, without hard numbers. We had soft numbers. We were able to make that decision on the strength of the concept and the strength of the rough numbers that we had. And eventually, it all came together and we came out with a beautiful product. I see this kind of like that. This is the rough idea here, the conceptual framework that we're going to ask the public to vote on. If the public votes in favor of that conceptual framework, we're going to be, or if the board votes on this conceptual framework tonight, we'll flesh it out some more. We'll get the plans and the specs and maybe some information on dollar figures that we can share with the public and then ask the public to vote on it. But I kind of think of it as a similar process that we go through when we do capital projects.
Yeah, just to maybe paraphrase what I think I heard you say, Larry, and that is, I'll support this if we publicly state that this is a two-step process and we are committing to the homeowners that if this is passed, that we've got more work to do, we are committed to doing that work, and that it's going to be a high priority in the operational aspects of this board throughout the rest of this tenure and into the next boards. In other words, I want to state publicly, because if we're not stating that, I'm not going to support it. But if we are stating that, we're making a commitment to our homeowners that we're going to continue this process, and that we agree that is a multi-step process that's going to require a lot of care and feeding, a lot of planning, a lot of input from the homeowners, then I will support it. But if we can't, so I want to hear everybody say that we are publicly supporting the fact that we have a multi-step process, and we will make a commitment to our homeowners that once this goes into place, we still got more work to do, and we're going to be committed to that.
And I agree with you, and and I do support that, and I do recognize we have a lot of work to do here. I have to tell you, from the beginning, I was not so sure about all of this, but over the last year, with the issues we experienced last summer, and, you know, the first response was, well, there's only 2 or 3 problem rentals in the community. Well, I think all the emails we've gotten over the last 6 months indicates that there are more problems going on here. And from what we heard at from the community at the town hall meeting, I have to tell you, and I've told several fellow board members, I was surprised at the number of people that came out to support this short-term rental regulation and the stories that we heard. You know, there is more problem out there than just the 2 or 3 homes that we experienced last summer. So I agree. I think this has to. I think we have to do this, but I also agree there's a lot more work to do. The specifics have to be nailed down, and you're right. We can't ask the community to vote on something they don't know what they're voting on, and I think I'm committed to that next step.
Larry, I'm sorry. Frank, would you accept a friendly amendment to include that in your motion, that there will be ongoing work on this to include other parts of the community, or something like what Larry just said a little bit more eloquently than I did?
I don't think well, it's up to Frank, but I don't think we need that.
It says any and all actions.
Yeah, I don't think we need that amendment to the motion. I think the motion speaks for itself.
Well, as long
That's
as,
up to
as
Frank.
long as we're all on board about that, and the minutes reflect that is our intent, because I think that's very important. I agree with you.
I'll say one more thing, maybe to your point. You read it literally, to undertake any and all actions necessary.
That's fine with me, as long as we know what that means.
Well, I think Larry asked the question, and I think everybody can answer. Look, I'm in it for the long haul. I didn't spend 2 years of my time working on something and walk away from it. Not in my nature.
Yeah, I can guarantee you Frank's not going to let this one fall through the cracks. Are there any further discussion? All right, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? Motion passes. Hey, Cammie, you have a first reading?
Yes, thank you, Larry. In your packets, we have a first reading of resolution CO4. The purpose to keep the content of the bylaws and the requirements of the committee up to date with needs and expectations of the organization. Per the governing documents, proposed changes to resolution CO4 are being submitted for a first reading and included on the agenda. The Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee completed a routine scheduled review of Resolution CO4 Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee. This resolution outlines the duties and responsibilities of the committee. At the June 4th, 2021 committee meeting, it was unanimously agreed by a quorum present that the resolution be revised as indicated in the attached red line draft. The proposed revision recognizes the committee's responsibility to assure the resolution revision provisions of Resolution B01 are followed, and they are attached to my resolution.
And what are the changes? that you mentioned?
The changes are found on the attachment to the motion, and those changes are redlined under functions, letter 3A, with the red line being assisting the Board of Directors in the preparation of revision of the charter, bylaws, resolution, and other documents necessary for the governance and direction of the association, new change, and compliance with the resolution amendment procedures that are an attachment to Resolution B01.
Okay. That's a first reading. I don't think we need to have any discussion on it tonight. Okay, the last item for tonight are appointments. I'll just read the appointments and we can do a vote at the end. For Chair of the Aquatics Committee, Brooks Enzer. Third term Aquatics, Anne Marie Wolfsheimer. First term Aquatics, Steve Cohen. First term Recreation and Park, Patty Stevens. First term Aquatics, Ellen Hench. And first-term strategic planning, Gary Miller. Can I have a motion to accept the appointments?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we're adjourned.